Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town has reserved the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. So please add your full name to your Zoom identity. As a preliminary matter, this is Brian Sullivan, the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Penny Dye?
Here.
Rima Sherry?
Here.
Brooke Moore?
Here.
Great. Members of staff, Tucker Holland?
Here.
Allison Mitchell?
Here.
Ken Bogrand?
Here.
Members anticipated to speak. I have Alan Warden.
Here.
Ann Kuspa.
Present.
Dave Arminetti.
I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And Clifford Williams.
Yes, present.
Thank you. There's a number of other members, but I'm not sure who else is anticipated. By show of hands or another member. Okay, great. There's two people identified, one as Anna, and maybe you're just on twice, one by phone. Is that Anna Tapp? Are you on a phone and a computer?
Oh, Anna, you're muted.
The other Anna's not me.
Okay, thank you. Would the other Anna fully identify herself, just for the record?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
This is Anna Day from the Nantucket Land Council.
Great, thank you. And if you just put your full name on your...
Yep.
Great, thank you. Moving on. This open meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely pursuant of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust is convening by video conference via Zoom app, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that the meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We'll turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, please permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda, and after they conclude their remarks, we'll go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until their name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you're not speaking. Remember to speak clearly in ways that help generate accurate minutes. For any responses, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you to state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford the public to comment. For those members of the public who have joined the meeting via Zoom, members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call. With that, we'll move to the first item on the agenda. And I'll look for a motion.
Move to approve the agenda.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Penny, and by roll call, Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Penny Dye.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Brian Sullivan's an aye. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Open for comments, questions, edits.
I haven't had time to read them.
Okay. Rima?
Yeah, I have a change on the July 2nd, page 2.
Okay.
Under item 5.
Why don't we
let Allison get there? You there? Okay. On the certification of safe harbor, it was a little confusing. And if you go down to the sentence that says, we were able to have our new HPP certified, if you change that to certification, because it's not our new HPP, it's just a new certification. I think just changing that word to certification clarifies everything.
So I'd like, with that change and with Penny not having an opportunity to review them, to look for a motion to carry them over to the next meeting.
I'll make that motion. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Rena by roll call. Penny Dye,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye.
Thank you.
Public comment for items not on the agenda. Any of the members of public? Seeing no hands or head movement or motion, I will move on to the next item. Closing cost assistance applications. We have an application for 3 Sand Plain Drive. Grozdanova family.
That is correct. And I won't try to pronounce either, but yes, we have it. This is actually our first application under the 175% AMI level for one of the units at the Richmond location. You have a copy of all the paperwork. I think they had put together a complete application. They have been qualified by Housing Nantucket, as you saw, and we would ask an approval of this closing cost for this family.
A motion to approve.
Okay, great. Before we take that motion, Brooke, was that a question or a comment or?
Well, I'll second and then ask my question.
Okay, so we have a second and a question.
Are these homes exempt from the land bank fee?
I don't know that I know the answer to that right off the top of my head. I mean, I think they would be subject to the same threshold that the land bank has for first-time home buyer. Penny's raising her hand, I see.
Just everybody who's a first-time buyer is exempt up to 800, the first 850,000.
Okay, so it's first time, not AMI. Okay, great.
Yep.
Thanks for the clarification. Okay, that's it.
So we have an approval and a motion and a second by roll call. Penny Dye.
Aye.
Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Excellent. Moving on to item number 6, we have a covenant formation assistance program, an update on the Stovers.
Yeah, I see, Ann Cuspa is here. And I don't know if you want to just mention this, but the understanding is that the Stovers, they were our first CFAP applicant. They are not moving forward with the covenant lot creation. Therefore, they're going to be returning the funds within the original time frame. And please add any color that you think is helpful.
Sure. Thanks, Tucker. Ann Cuspa, Housing Nantucket. And I spoke with Mr. Stover a couple times recently, and he says that he would like to settle up in the beginning of January or before. So his interest starts accruing on January 7th. And we have a date, like we made a appointment together January 6th. So he says he's just going to, sometime before that date, we'll settle up. He used about $6,000 of his allowable $10,000, and Housing Nantucket has that other $4,000. So we'll figure out how to true up when the time comes.
Did they get to planning board and then decide not to continue forward? Or?
Yeah, he says he's not ready at this time. He doesn't say he's never going to do it. He just says he doesn't want to do it at this time. But they did get the special permit.
Okay. Great. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thanks for the update, Ann. We have a presentation from the Nantucket Data Platform. Tucker, do you have any opening comments, or should we just open to Alan? Or
I mean, I can just briefly start by, first of all, thanking the data platform for being here today. As the board knows, we had done a project with the platform a couple of years ago. They've been doing work for other communities around the country. I had the opportunity recently to see some of the work they had done, sort of a 2.0 version of what they had done for us for the city of Charleston, South Carolina, and thought that it would very much be worthwhile for the board to have that presentation and opportunity to talk with the data platform team about how their work there might be applied here. And with that, I'll turn it over to Alan.
Thanks, Tucker, and thanks, Brian, and everyone on the call. I want to quickly introduce Anna Tapp, our lead data scientist, and Remy Beveridge, who has Nantucket roots. Her aunt is Betty DuPont, who many of you know. Total coincidence that we met Remy. Remy was the project manager for the Charleston work. So I'm going to show a couple slides. And Remy's going to walk you through sort of the punchline. We started this work all around the effective population. And as you may recall, we were able to figure out the number of year-round residents, the number of summer residents, et cetera. We're updating that work now. And we should have it, I think, in the first quarter of the new year. So we sort of got known for counting, and since then we've done a bunch of work for leaders on Nantucket. We've done some work for the airport, did some COVID work, some deeper demographic work, just finished some work for the dump, did some really interesting work with Paul O'Leary on public transit, obviously some work for you, including some deep data work and some survey work. And this was just a quick view of the housing lookup dashboard, where we looked at the different sorts of units on Nantucket. And as Tucker would say, that's sort of V1. And as Tucker mentioned, we're now working in about 15 states on affordable housing, vaccine hesitancy, the use of American Rescue Plan funds. And so we're a team of about 30 people in Asia, Europe, Central America. I had no idea when we started how complicated this would get, but you can't have one data person, you need a bunch. And we've attracted some amazing advisors, including 3 people who used to be in the White House, who said local and state leaders don't have this kind of data. So one of them introduced us to the mayor of Charleston, and they have a huge affordable housing deficit. They were working on a 10-year comprehensive plan. They have self-ranked themselves the #1 city in the US for gentrification, huge problem, ethnic problem. And they had some data within a much larger planning department than Nantucket's, but it was siloed, and they had no in-house team to pull it together. And so, one of the things that we really believe is a question well scoped is half answered. And so we said to Charlotte, we spent a lot of time with them figuring out what is the question. And they said, without regard to constraints, regulatory constraints, as we look ahead to the next 10 years, based on who lives here and a 10-year projection, do we have the right inventory? And for them, that meant quality and price to house that population. And their gut was they didn't have it. And so they sort of said, and assuming not, or if not, what is really needed? And to do that, you need to know who is there, the people side, and you need to know the property side, which you can generally lean on GIS. And then you look for the past. And the punchline here was the front page of the paper, which said, and they were kind of proud of building 200 affordable housing units a year. And the math answer was they were never going to get there at 200 units a year. And while we wondered and worried whether leaders would say, oh my God, like what are we going to do? Anna and Remy presented to the city council, which had a variety of leaders in affordable housing. And they essentially said, okay, thank you. Now we have a target. How are we going to do it? And they are now rallied around this number of 16,000 units over the next 10 years. And so we did two things for them. One of them was the map, which should look familiar because it was based on V1, the work we did for Nantucket. And we were able to look at pricing of all the property, various attributes and demographics, the people side. But the real punchline, I'm going to let Remy walk you through, which we call the gap analysis. And there are just 2 slides here.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks everyone for having us as well. So like Alan said, this is based off of the work we did in Charleston and what we were trying to figure out for their 10-year comprehensive plan. So we first wanted to talk about how many households are in Charleston at the point in time in 2020. Then, because this was a 10-year plan looking forward, what is the projected number of households in 2030? Then how many units are currently available? What do we have to work with? And then one of the other pieces of information that Charleston was specifically interested is the number of units allowable by current zoning. So they didn't know if their zoning was a problem. Do they have enough potential units, but maybe not by zoning? And so Anna, who's also on the call, did a lot of work with their zoning code to understand with the current zoning, could we produce the number of units? And as you can see, zoning for them was not a problem, but that doesn't mean it's not a problem for other places. And so then what we figured out is their big question, does the housing supply match household income around the city? And we found that it doesn't. So as you look on the left-hand side, we have these different income brackets. And this is the breakdown of the AMI level for Charleston specifically. So as you can see in this next part, the number of households. So like Alan said, we looked at the number of people. So the number of households that fit in each of those income bands. Then the next column, we see the number of units available. So what we determined was available is available at that specific price point. And we used HUD's definition of 30% or less of their pre-tax income. Then on the far right-hand side, we can see the mismatch. So it's about 7,000 units at the 30% AMI level that they don't have. So 7,000 households are living in a place that's cost burden for them. But then what was really interesting, if you look at the next 3 AMI levels at 50, 60, and 65%, there actually is enough inventory at those levels. So we talked about, Alan, Ann, and I talked about this briefly yesterday. We can't house people. We can't say, you need to go here, but we need to look at the supply and what's available. So just kind of to sum this up, we saw a mismatch at the 30% AMI level, the 80%, and then the above 120. But then there was sufficient supply at various AMI levels.
And this really started because I was getting briefed by Tucker on the good work he and you all are doing. And so much of that work is driven by the regulatory framework of understanding the shy list and are we going to hit it and are we protected by 40B? And Tucker has become a master of that, whether he wanted to or not. He is the master of that. And I said, Tucker, if you just forgot all that, like how many units does Nantucket need? And he said, I'm not sure I know. Like, don't you know? And that's when we actually figured that out for Charleston. And so that was, we figured out specifically these 2 bands are where the need was. And what prompted this was, unconstrained by the shy list, what's the real need on the island? So that's what led us here, and happy to show you the work we've been doing and answer any questions.
So open to the board for questions, Rima?
Yeah, that last graphic was interesting to me because the biggest deficit was for units for greater than 120,000. So did you find, or do you think that that creates encroachment into properties that are more designed for lower incomes and then just changing them into fancy, like what we see here. Buying a property in maybe a year-round neighborhood and expanding it to be a vacation or fancy house.
Can I take that one, Alan?
Yeah.
Yep. This is Anna Taff with Community Data Platforms. What we did for Charleston was we made them aware. So we made them aware of the deficit, both at the high end and at the low end, so that they could get ahead and kind of really think as a community how they were going to deal with kind of what you're talking about, Rima. So really the value that we brought was showing them the data, and then they could sit around and they could, make the comments like you did and say, okay, we need to kind of figure this out. And then the city council took it from there in order to, and also the planning department, like, how are we going to mitigate this situation? And so we were really excited about the conversations we heard. It was about issues like that. It was about how they have too much zoning, and so they can't really regulate density in the situation they have. And also, like Nantucket, there were parts of the city of Charleston that they really care about environmental preservation. So that was a part of the conversation as well. So it's many faceted, and we loved being able to present the data that could start those great conversations.
Thanks, Anna.
Sure.
Thank you, Anna. Penny?
Brian, through you to Alan, or to the team, I have a couple of questions about the sources that you use to quantify the data about the people, the population, and it's kind of a twofold question. In Charleston, I know there's a seasonality component similar to Nantucket. Is there a comparable immigrant population there? So what were the sources, and is there an immigrant population comparable to Nantucket?
So I'll answer that as well, Penny. Their focus area was not on immigrant populations. We didn't find that to be kind of a huge source of the issues in Charleston. It was more historical inequities. And that's what we really focused on, is the historical inequities of people of color. And, what can we do to stop it, basically? Like, if they not just turn back time, but how can we pause what's going on right now in terms of people being forced out of the places that they've lived for generations because they can't afford it anymore. So we didn't have a huge focus there on the immigrant population, but that's not to say that we don't have the data sets to focus on that.
Okay, so just, and how did you gather the information then?
A variety of different commercial data sources is what we used in this case. And we also had some data from the planning department in terms of projections, because they had already done that work.
Okay, and then just lastly, how heavily did you rely on census data?
What we did is, I would say almost no reliance on census data except for a sanity check.
Thank you.
So we would sanity check against it.
The demographic sources we use, Penny, we spend a huge amount of time QAing the data. And so we've looked at dozens of providers of demographic data. And I'm not sure which one we use for Charleston, but they give us a snapshot of 90% of the adult population, and it's updated every 30 days. And we believe it is wildly more reliable than the US Census, particularly the last census, which we're all very worried about.
So you were looking at 90% of the population in the area that you were aggregating? Is that what you were saying?
No, our data sources give us 90% of the US adult population on a monthly basis.
So how big was the sample set of that you were drawing for Charleston, that you were drawing the conclusions from?
We ended up using about 80% of the adult population. And I'll just to be transparent, there are some groups of people that are easier to track than others. We have a lot more data on homeowners than we do on renters. So what we did is separate the groups out. Some of them had larger sample sizes. I would say homeowners is closer to 95%. And then the renters, it was still a really, really nice sample, but it was more like 50 or 60%. And we were able to, it was sufficient data for us to make our projections by far.
And when you looked at the group, the 120% and above, did you break that group down at all? Or is it all just lumped in 120 and above? Because it looks like a needs group, but is that everybody?
Yes, it is everybody. So I wouldn't couch it so much as a needs group as an opportunity group for Charleston. So there is opportunity to build more high-end households. Once you get above 120, I would say some people don't make the choice to use a full 30% of their income on housing. So that's why I would call it more of an opportunity.
Right, like Nantucket, there's a 120 to 200 needs group,
right?
Where in Charleston, it may not be the case. Okay.
Exactly, so we did parse that out, yeah.
The data's there, Brian, that the city didn't need it. And what's funny is some for-profit developers have seen this and have said, can you break that out? Because it seems like there's a high-end opportunity in Charleston, which there is, but it wasn't what the affordable housing team and the planning department was interested in. But the data is totally there.
Brooke, did I see your hand go up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, through you, Brian. I would be curious about what challenges Nantucket would present to you. You guys started here and we threw you a very, very difficult task a couple of years ago. And it, you know, if you circle back here, what unique challenges will we present for you the second time around? Because we like to think of ourselves as special all the time.
On the data side, Nantucket is very special. I'm going to let Anna answer this question. I will just tell you, at one point we were doing all this, not this housing work, but other work for Nantucket. We got a call from Austin saying, can you help us? And I sort of swallowed hard. And I called Anna and said, boy, that seems pretty big. And she said, give me Austin, because there'll be much more data and it'll be much easier to use. So I have had a number of conversations with Anna about what we learned in Charleston and what data does or does not exist on Nantucket. So I'll throw that to Anna.
Yeah, I would say the assessor's data is really good for Nantucket, and we have a great process for pulling that in and processing it, and we learned really well there. The biggest challenge for us was understanding the rental market, and I think we've talked to you about this before, Brooke. It's not very transparent. People put, units up for rent and they get swiped up really quickly at a price point that isn't, made public. So there aren't rental listings all over Nantucket that we can pull from. So I think that would be our greatest challenge. And Alan being in the real estate business in the past, we have some really good ideas for surveys and getting a better future handle on what people are paying in the rental market, both surveying agents who are closely tied to it, as well as kind of going back to our housing survey. I think Alan mentioned before, our charge from you guys before was to understand the seekers. And so we would redesign that so we could really understand the current situation of all Nantucketers. And we could do that in a way that more facilitates understanding the rental market.
So,
yep, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask as a follow-up, or not even as a follow-up, as another question. How does your data in Charleston reflect the seasonality? And are we talking about year-round population here, or all units? How does that figure into what you visualized in that data for us?
The municipal bounds of Charleston are not the big vacation communities. So if you look at where the city bounds are, it doesn't involve like the Isle of Palms, and I'm trying to remember all those islands that are extremely seasonal. Yeah, and so that wasn't part of our mission going in. And they also regulate their short-term rentals pretty well. So I think that you're not allowed to have a short-term rental you don't live at. So it wasn't a big issue for our area of interest if you look at the bounds.
Yet it would be here, so it'd be interesting. Right. Yeah, that's it's an important question. And again, I think when I look back on the work we did with you last time, I think we could have been a lot clearer about what the question was. And I learned a lot in that regard. And so thank you.
That's a huge problem for lots of folks, Brooke. And what I would say is the result of the work we did for you is not uncommon for other leaders, which is you need the base data. You need to bring it together. And when you've got that, that is the hard boiler room work of aggregating data, structuring it, cleaning it. And we did a bunch of that work. So that is well usable in a V2.
And
thanks, Alan. How does the work that you did help us solve our problem here? Because obviously in places like Charleston and other places, the amount of available land to be able to solve the problem by increasing the number of housing units generally is not a problem. We're here on Nantucket. It is a major part of the problem because there's less than 4% of available land left at all in terms of doing anything, let alone available land that might be affordable. So how do you and your team see that this can help us in terms of figuring out how to be able to come up with a solution once we know the scope of the problem, which clearly your approach is getting at?
Yeah, I'll do a quick intro and then Anna will say something smarter. Charleston, although you think of the land, Ken, what got in their craw was the fact that people of color were being forced to leave neighborhoods where they had been for generations. So they didn't view this as an unconstrained solution. In fact, they had various planning districts, and they asked us to figure out, based on who's living in these, I think, 5 or 6 areas, what is the inventory in those 5 or 6 areas? And we don't want people to leave James Island for Johns Island. We don't want people to leave the peninsula for Daniel Island. And so they thought very much like an island. They did not want people to have to leave neighborhoods where they had longstanding connections. And so how the city's going to solve that, Anna, you may have a better sense because you spent more time with that team, but I think they felt the same way you do, Ken. Sure, they have a little more flexibility, but they viewed that solution as causing massive transportation issues, more childcare issues, because if you were driving in from an hour outside, your kids were in daycare longer. So it's not so easy to solve there. I don't know, Anna, if you want to add anything.
I don't know if I really have anything to add. I think that was a really good analogy of their planning districts, them treating them like islands. I think that was kind of perfect. So yeah.
And Ken, it would go to what Tucker and I were originally talking about. Just forget the shy list for a second. Is Nantucket 1,000 units short, 5,000 units short, 2,200 units short? At what price points? And once you have that data, and what I got a call the same day from Anna and Remy, who were very excited to say, we were in a meeting with leaders in Charleston who finally said, now we know the problem. We don't know how to solve it, but at least we know the size of the problem. And it's going to take everyone in Charleston the same way it would take everyone in Nantucket to solve it. But I don't think we know the size of the problem. They didn't either.
Hey, Tucker?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add that when Al and I were part of that update discussion a few weeks ago, I think we all understand, the house was on fire a few years ago. Nantucket had ignored this problem effectively for decades. And so the shy list was the place to start. We needed to right the ship. We have done that. We understand what it's going to take to stay in safe harbor and achieve the 10% requirement of the state. So at that point, the analogy I used was we could throw a dart, and as long as we hit the wall, like we were winning. You know, now we want to actually hit the dartboard and maybe particular numbers on that dartboard. And so when I saw the presentation that you all just saw from Remy and Anna and Alan a few weeks ago, my immediate reaction was, if we could have this information in an accurate form, something that we felt we had a great deal of confidence in the numbers, this is exactly what we need. Like this, we have known for a while, we want to be able to answer the question, what are we trying to solve for? And so this is the type of information that I think is crucial to the next phase of our work.
Brooke?
And I also think, to Ken's question, the build out number, right? What could be done under current zoning is really critical information for Nantucket, because we may not have a lot of undeveloped land, but we have probably a lot of underdeveloped property. And so, we have a choice as a community. Are we going to allow that property to be developed to its full potential for whom, right? For where is that development potential going to go? And that's a policy decision for the community to make, right? If there's another, 10,000 units under current zoning, this shortage number tells us, like, if we need 30% of our housing to be for year-rounders, and we're short of that, then it will drive this data can drive policy decisions from the select board level through the planning board, through our work, all the way down through. And it sort of brings together for me the information we need to know whether it's zoning changes or whether it's, more investment in the community land trust, or more investment in 30 and 50% rental units, AMI rental units. Like, to me, this is what I'm hungry for, so I can make the argument to the community for the investment we need to make, and what it is and where it is and how it is. So it's really interesting to me.
Any more questions or comments? Remy, I think I saw a digital hand up from you a moment ago. Did you have a comment you wanted to make? No? Okay, great. Thank you guys very much for joining us today in the presentation.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Nice to see you all.
Good to see you, Brooke. Bye-bye.
Item number 8, we have, let's see, Anne, covenant program rules and monitoring discussion.
Okay, hello. Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how the trust could help, as far as now that there are 100 covenant units out there. We have a bit of experience on what works and what doesn't. So overall, things work. The regulations work. We have and are enforcing and
I got my phone on my desk.
Excuse me?
Keep going, sorry.
Okay. To get the units that we find out are not in compliance into compliance. Recently there was a foreclosure on one of the covenant homes, and we know that the deed restriction does survive foreclosure, so that's a good thing. We can also force people with the threat of foreclosing on the property ourselves to then comply with the regulation. So all those things are good. There's some things that I think could be tightened up, and that has become clear as well. So I don't really know exactly what you all were thinking, but I know kind of what I was thinking that this process could look like. So I thought I'd kind of just throw that out here. But what I thought was, I sent around kind of my own notes, internal notes about what we're seeing and different ideas that have been presented to us, like suggestions for improvement. So I thought maybe we could discuss those, just kind of bigger picture items, then go back to Housing Nantucket's board, and then ultimately the Housing Authority's board with our suggestions. Then once we all are on the same page about what we think should change, then we could get town council. I mean, I'm happy to look at the regulations myself to see where I think these changes would fit in, but essentially work with town council to put in new kind of adjustments, edits into the regulations. Then we need to have the public hearing process and let everybody know, everybody who owns a covenant home, as well as just everybody through the paper and other outreach efforts that we can have, that there will be a public hearing, and that would be held by the Housing Authority. And then to hear what the public comment is, and then digest that, make any changes as needed. Then we need to, within 90 days, go to the town clerk with the new regulations, and then there's a certain date that we would decide that as of this date, the new regulations are in effect, and then we can start enforcing any new regulations that we decide upon.
Thank you, Anne. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments for Anne's process? Penny?
Yeah, hey, Anne, I just had a quick question. Are there, just Anne, I guess this would be anecdotal more than anything. Are there sort of patterns with abuse of the rules, like people renting out their basements or something?
The thing is, that's allowed. You know, when it's, for example, you know, we had an issue with 3 quail. The way that I see kind of some of the biggest things are we doing the best job monitoring? The way that we get notified of violations, suspected violations, has been from neighbors. So I don't know if there's a better way or if that is the best way that we would get notified. That was one big issue. Another one is that there will be deed transfers recorded at the Registry of Deeds that we are unaware of. And I don't know how to, like, mostly it would be a single person who owns the house, and then years later they get married, and then it gets recorded for both of them are on the deed now. So, you know, those kind of things, it says that we should get notified of that, but we're not. So that's another thing. As for the renting the rooms, if the owner lives in the house, they can rent rooms, they can rent a basement. So, but then there's been concerns about Airbnb, and should it be allowed that someone can rent out a short-term rental? Or even if they are having lodgers, which is allowed, should we be monitoring the rent that's being charged to that lodger?
Go ahead, Penny.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, when, say, the land council, I guess there's somebody here from the land council, holds a conservation restriction on a property, part of the restriction is they have to inspect on some sort of a regular basis. So maybe, oh, I sort of hate to think of this, but maybe that's something that needs to happen. Just a thought.
I mean, they're homeowners. It's not like a rental situation where.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, to Penny's point, it's the same sense with a conservation restriction. The property it's a homeowner, and the property gets walked on an annual basis. Or when you and I discussed the property tax abatement for the homeowner, how are those monitored for your year-round property tax abatement? Maybe that's another way to investigate how those are done. But aside from that, an annual affidavit, what would be the right that you could have, whether it was in regular practice on an annual basis, but what right could you maintain to have? Would it be an annual inspection or?
Well, and what recourse is there? I mean, we've already talked about that. Just circling back to the deed thing. I think you should get some legal advice on that, but there would seem to be something that could trigger a notification if there's going to be a change to the deed.
Well, my understanding from talking to the Registry of Deeds is it wouldn't be their responsibility to notify us. But yeah, I suppose.
No, I mean, when somebody buys property, they have to pay, most people, the land bank fee, and you can't record without it. And all the lawyers know that. So I think it's a question of educating the legal community. They're the people that are doing the recordings usually.
The 3 Quail, for example, that was done by an off-island attorney.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Mm. So you need to that point with the land bank, don't you need paperwork, even an exemption, or to add a name from the land bank to go and record a new deed?
And so the land bank was notified of that one, but it didn't. So
maybe we can try to work with land bank administration to be notified in that scenario if there's a covenant that exists on it as part of the process. Yeah. Versus the registry. Maybe we can look to jump into that step in the process versus the registry step in the process. Brooke, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I've been talking to a bunch of people about this, this question of what is the goal, right? What is the goal of the covenant program, right? And what is important to restrict and what is not important to restrict? Because, you know, I'm working on this community land trust, and I'm on the group that's going to be helping devise the leasehold arrangement and the contract. And these questions of privacy and how much oversight and so on and so forth are part of that discussion. And so it's in my head a lot as I'm reading through these documents. And I think, like, when I look at Quail Lane, what was the critical element of this that was a problem? The critical element was not that other year-rounders were renting rooms, right? What was offensive about it, right? It was that the owner was not in residence, right? So I imagine a scenario, right, where you buy a 3-bedroom covenant house, you don't have kids yet. The way you make it work is to rent a room until your family grows into the house and and your income grows into the house. So maybe it's about going back and having a more overarching conversation about what is important to regulate, what is feasible to regulate and oversee, and then communicate to the community why we might let certain things go, because it's not feasible to oversee it in the way that one would need to enforce, like how much rent someone's paying on a room and whether or not they're doing short-term rentals when there's no other short-term rental regulations across the community. And no, you know, obviously there are ways to verify it. If people are doing it legally now, they're paying taxes and they're registered with the state. So without the infrastructure and the mechanisms for oversight, maybe some of these regulations don't even make any sense. Anyway, it's more of a philosophical conversation than a nuts and bolts conversation at this point in my head.
Thank you, Brooke. Any more? Go ahead, Ann.
If I may, just with regards to 3 Quail, the owner was not there. But within the regulations, it says that the owner or a member of the owner's household must be there. There was a member of the owner's household there. So there was no regulation violation there. So that was one thing that I think, just looking at the incidents themselves, I think we could certainly tighten that aspect of the regulations. If not to say that the owner must be present, if a household member is going to take the place of the owner, then Housing Nantucket needs to be notified and needs to approve of that. Because then in that case, just kind of thinking that through, we probably would have approved of that in this situation because there was a child that was going to school. There were, the household member was part of the original application. There were a couple of different things that were happening there.
Yeah, after the point at which there was no household. So I think you're right. And I certainly wouldn't want to create a scenario where a couple parts ways and both end up homeless because the partner who's staying is on the deed, right? So that's a scenario I would want to avoid. But when no household member or no part of the original, it can't become a full-time rental property as it looks like it did toward the tail end. So that would be the thing that I would want to control for. It's tough.
Go
ahead, Ken.
Okay, thanks. Building on Brooke's question, part of what we're trying to do is to create a better level of understanding of what the purpose of the covenant program is and what you can and can't do. So part of my thought is that when somebody starts in the covenant program, would it make sense to have a checklist that's very clear and says, these are the things you can do and these are the things you can't do, and have them sign it as a separate document so that there's no question of what their rights and duties and obligations are. And so it makes it clear as to, what they're supposed to do, what we're going to monitor, and what would cause them to lose the benefit of the covenant property.
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there is in the application, we have a section where it says that they'll follow all the program rules. We have a one-on-one interview with the applicant in which we go over a presentation with them where we go over what the rules are. And that's, a PowerPoint. We sit down with them for an hour. Is it possible to put a checklist in there also? I don't see why not.
I'm just thinking, and the fact is that, when you're going through the process with all this heavy paperwork and you're listening to everything, it all gets muddled and everything like that, and it's lost in the shuffle. My just thought process was that there's a very real reason why this is so important in a community, because it allows these things to happen. And so having a sheet that says, this is what you're allowed to do in terms of, this is why we have the program. This is what you're allowed to do within the program. And this is what you're not allowed to do within the program. It's very easy for them to, you don't want to have somebody say, well, I know I sat down with you 2.5 years ago and it was an hour and I signed 236 pages, but I can't remember everything like that. So it was just my thought in terms of making it easy, that there is not a lack of understanding of the benefits of the program. And because there are benefits, there are also restrictions, and these are clear with respect to what those restrictions are.
I think to that point, Ken, it's not even at the time that you sign up for the program. The program itself should have the authority to do that on an annual basis. Here's the form again. Would like to meet with you to come in and sign the form and recognize that, yes, I live here full-time, or a family member lives here full-time, and we've requested your electric bill and your cell phone bill and your this, that, or your driver's license and your voter registration, whatever the forms are that you're requiring for proof of residency. And at any given point within a calendar, whatever the program is. And then when you and I talked about this is not a solution today. This is a process to work through to then identify that this is how the system will do it. Because I think what was learned through Quail Lane is time is showing that there are opportunities missed. And here we're going to learn how to correct problems that arise over time. And so what systems can we put in place to help the program moving forward? I think that's it more than anything. So Allison, you had a...
Yeah, I was just going to say basically what you just said, Sully, was, you know, Ken's idea is great, but it's one of those things that if Housing Nantucket and Ann aren't being informed of changes on the deed, or if a different household member's living there, they may not get that checklist at the very beginning. But if you're working on something that's an annual, you know, something they have to fill out, then you would be sure that even if the household members do switch or something like that, that they would all be informed of what the rules are.
I think in part of the process in creating an annual, like you have a lot of properties now, you have a lot of households, right? We're over 100. Hopefully we're going to get to 200. It's going to be a lot of work, right? There's going to be a system in place, but you're going to need to have a system to do an audit on an annual basis of 100 properties. And what does that look like? And how can we help you? How can we be a resource to help get you through an annual audit of 100 properties and 100 households? And what do we need to do to support you to do that? And what does a complete and full audit look like? And not that whether we do all 100 every year, or it's, you know, 50 a year and we do them every other year, or it's 25 in every fourth year, whatever the system looks like, but let's develop what a complete audit looks like. I think that's the question.
So you're suggesting, I'm sorry, just could I repeat that then? Are you suggesting that a physical inspection would be required at every certain number of years?
I'm suggesting that a physical inspection is within the authority of an audit. Yes. Penny?
Yeah, I just want to hop in here. Ann, isn't your board dealing with all this? I mean, we're happy to help, but it would seem like it would be under the aegis of your board.
Yep, and that's it just came up, kind of the impetus of this presentation or discussion or whatever. A couple of weeks ago, I was asked about it. It was on an agenda item, and so I was asked to report on 3 Quail Lane specifically. And so then it brought up this discussion about, you know, do we need help looking at the regulations, and could we use help from town council when the time came to legally review the regulations? And we could. So that's why I'm here. So.
Okay, thank you.
Rima?
Are the rules and regulations part of a contract that the owner signs at the time of acquisition of the property?
They sign something that says that they agree to follow the program rules. So it's not, they aren't signing the actual regulations.
Yeah, maybe that should be its own contract as part of the agreement. So there is a document with everything listed and their signature at the bottom. So if there is a violation, it's kind of easier to pull that up and say, well, you sign this. Just an idea.
Yeah.
Brooke?
I mean, I think that the fundamental question here is, how do you find out that there's non-compliance? What is the process by which one finds out? And right now it's mostly reporting from neighbors. If the neighbors have that, even know that it's an issue or that it's a covenant house or that there are rules, and are willing to out their neighbor, right? Which is how we do zoning enforcement on Nantucket as a rule, right? Health code and zoning enforcement is by reporting to the proper authority. And so the question is there a way to discern compliance that's over and above waiting to hear that something is wrong? And and there's a community interest, right, in allowing a subdivision of a non-subdividable property. And I mean, I sort of feel like in terms of the viability of affordable housing and support for it, having people feel like that it's generally a good thing and not taken advantage of. And again, you can never get everything 100%. So I'm talking and not really saying anything, I realize, other than sort of identifying what the problem is.
Well, I think you are, right? Like, I think you're saying rather than waiting around for people to complain, that is there a system that we want to create for a proactive audit system? You know, that's the question. So, and we'll kick it back. We look forward to hearing, you know, the result of your board and the solutions that you're going to come up with and how you would like us to support you on getting through that, and and how we can refer them to town council for their opinions on any of the legal matter, and go through the public hearing process with you, and continue to support the program.
Okay, so just so I know, what would you're suggesting? Just basically greater oversight once the units are within the covenant program, just more, I don't want to say like intrusive, but basically like getting in there so that we find a different way to find non-compliant people. Yes?
So right now, so for an example, right now on an annual basis, how are you communicating with the homeowners?
We have an annual affidavit that they send back that says that these are the people who live in the unit. They are not renting the unit as a whole, and they live there 10 out of 12 months per year.
Okay. So everybody just signs that and sends that back. So,
correct. Well, not everybody. That's the other thing. It's some people don't.
So at that point, what do you do?
We just keep sending it to them like 5 times. And then really when they need something from us, then we tell them that they're not in compliance and we need these forms, and then pursue it that way.
So I think you need an opportunity in your process to give you the right, when they don't respond to your registered letter affidavit in a period of time, to do an inspection, send a violation notice, and then send them that they are in violation. You need some more teeth or some more in your letter, or some, you know, you're going to file a notice on their deed or title, right? So this becomes a opportunity for town council in how you're doing it.
We might not even need that though. With, you know, I don't know that the regulations go into, if they don't reply, we might be able to go and schedule an inspection today. So I'll look at the regulations for that.
Well, I think what it is it feels like the system may need a little bit more proactive than we're hearing about things secondhand when they're getting there. Penny?
What it's missing is the ramifications, right?
Right.
And that's probably in your charter or your documents or something. But
well, it's fine.
Okay, that's fine. But they'll need to be reminded of that, I guess.
Or they need to start being levied in a manner that people start to worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, with regards to, let's take 3 Quail Lane again. So he was replying to the affidavit. He was sending that back. So he was within compliance. So we wouldn't have not gotten it and then done the inspection.
So maybe the affidavit needs to evolve a little bit so that it has some more information, whether it's the license, some, you know, maybe you need a few pieces of mail, maybe you need some other, you know, proof of pay stubs. I don't know what the other verification of residency is, or, you know, whom are they identifying is the occupant that is a family member, and how you're doing that. But anybody is going to just sign a piece of paper and say, yes, it's all set, and not worry about it. But there, again, you may need to put a little more teeth into your process. Tucker?
Yeah, I just was going to say, I think in the Three Quail Lane case, the person was misrepresenting, as I understand, the actual circumstance. So, I mean, I think there's something to all that it's been talked about today. I think Ken's notion of a, you know, after going through the class, if you will, with Anne, you know, a single page affirmation in writing of, these are the basic rules, and I understand that, you know, without having to read through a 30-page document, but these are the basic rules that I'm signing up for. And maybe the penalty is succinctly included right there. So there's zero doubt about what applies to, in certain circumstances. But as you know, as you said, Mr. Chair, like, you know, we're here to help however we can help in tightening up the program, you know, inspiring confidence in the program and so forth. And Anne knows that town council has said they're more than happy to look at anything and make suggestions and so forth. So we're here to help.
Thank you.
And thank you for today. Happy to continue offline or throughout the course of, you know, with suggestions as you need them. So let us know what we can do.
Thank you.
All right, great. Moving on to the next item in the agenda. Are we on to 9? Clay Street Development, Clifford Williams. Clifford on here.
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
We can.
All right, fantastic. First, I'd like to thank everybody for letting me speak today and the board. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with Clay Street. It's actually 44 Skyline Drive. It's in the southerly direction of the Richmond Group's property. It was originally part of the Richmond Group property. It was cut off and sold, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. I just purchased it this summer, and I was looking at the property. I've been looking at it for a while. I just thought it was a great opportunity, considering the logistics of the property, to bring it back into more of a zoning like they have at the Richmond Group. I've talked to Andrew Vorse and obviously with Tucker, and see if there's any interest of the Affordable Housing Trust to help me, or at least sponsor me in a certain way to back me with the zoning changes at town meeting, which I'm going to put in for this week. I've got the citizen articles out. I've got to change the sewer zoning, obviously, and at least get it down to 5,000 square foot zoning. Like I said, I think it's logistically in a great area as far as affordable housing. And I know the state's come up with a lot of new things to support affordable housing. I don't know particularly what they are. I was hoping through the help of your board and Tucker and everyone, we could work together and develop the property for 100% affordable housing. Just like I said, this is preliminary. I went to a meeting yesterday at the airport because they're going to bring water to Matacachan Valley and Skyline Drive. So that's actually starting this month. So now we've got water to the property. So the next thing would be zoning, the sewer. So hopefully I'll be more successful with your support, and hopefully between now and the spring we could work out details on just how maybe this would all work, and whether the state could get involved, or the trust could get involved, and we could all work together to make some shy units. And that's the beginning of what I've done so far. So I guess I'm looking for guidance from you and support from the trust. And if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Clifford. First, I see Penny's hand.
Yeah, through you, Brian, to Clifford. How many? Wait a minute. So you've got to get the zoning changed and the town water, right, before you could do this. And then what's the density? How many buildings are you proposing per lot if you got the zoning change?
I think we can get about 12, and then I mean, I was talking to Andrew and Tucker, like I said, and then we were trying to look at some maybe mixed use where they had, you know, freestanding units and then maybe cottages. I think this is a plan for like a Monomoy Village type development. So that's where right today it's just like I said, it's the beginning. I'm open for anything as far as what you people. We had that data about what we need and what would be best suited. And I mean, so we have 2.3 acres of land, and if we get it at least into 5,000 square foot zoning, we could use that to develop whatever the need might be.
Then, so just to follow up, if I could, Brian,
please.
Clifford. Yeah. All right. So what are you specifically asking us for? Is it financial support or conceptual support?
Well, eventually, I don't know if this is the program where we can develop the land and then you can buy the land from me, or I don't know how the program is going to be where the person comes in and the fireman or policeman buys the house and the Affordable Housing Trust buys the subdivision. However, or if the state has new ideas of how they're going to support it, I'm up for everything. But obviously the way things work, you have to put these things in by the 15th in order to consider them by the spring. And so I mean, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I can still develop the property in another way. But I was hoping to work with you to provide some shy units. And yeah, I'd have to work with the Richmond group also because the sewer has to come in from the north. The water is going in because of the PFAS problem, like I said. So that's already going to be put in. So we have water. It would just have to be changed. The district for sewer would have to be changed. There's no water district, it's a sewer district plan. So that would have to be implemented. So I just thought it's not going to fly if I was just going to subdivide the property. It would be, you know, it would have to be on behalf of affordable housing.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how, but I lost my screen. I can only see Penny.
Brooke has her hand up.
I was gonna say, Penny, you look great. Go ahead, Brooke.
It might be view upper right
there we
corner.
Go.
Yeah,
I got it.
Okay. So my Clifford, through you, Mr. Chair, you're looking at a home ownership scenario here, not owning and renting units out yourself. Am I assuming correctly there?
Yeah, and I don't know how if I owned them and I could build and rent affordably, I don't know how that would work. So I'm a novice when it comes to whatever programs you've all put together. I mean, this is your forte, this whole affordable housing, whether it's renting or building and subsidizing. So like I said, I'm just showing up right now and kind of trying to wave down the Affordable Housing Trust and ask what it is I can do for you and what can we do with this piece of land. Like I think just earlier it was mentioned there's only 4% of the land's left and how much of it's going to be used for affordable housing. So here's an opportunity for the affordable housing because it's a 2.3 acre piece of land. And logistically, like I said, it's just located, I think it's come together with this water being put in as a result of PFAS. And it was originally part of the Richmond group anyhow. And there's an easement that goes between Skyline and the Richmond group that was part of the original plan that they had before they went from 57 houses to the 40B they have now. So there's still an easement by the town, and Clay Road it's a gravel road. It was just completed, but it's going to be obviously under the planning board. I have to give that road to the town by I think 2023. So they're going to own the road anyhow. So there's just a lot coming together, and I'm just first throwing it out to put it on your radar. And between now and spring, if we can work something out, and however you want to develop it, I'm open to anything. So this is a first meeting, I guess, to do such a thing.
Brooke, did that get your question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question I would have is in terms of supporting the zoning change at town meeting. it's sort of a chicken and egg question of committing to doing a some kind of collaborative affordable housing effort on that space is a good selling point for town meeting to make the zoning change, and so I don't know how. Maybe we can help you figure out what it means to make that commitment in a way that's meaningful to the voters.
So I guess that's my question for you, Clifford, is would you be willing, your notes in provided say that it's 100% affordable housing is in the sheet. Do you only want the subdivision if it's all affordable housing? Like, we currently, the zoning code does not have an affordable housing zoning district. But if we went to Andrew and said we would like to have a affordable housing overlay district within R5 and have him do this that way, that all and any lots created were restricted to affordable housing of 120% AMI or less, is that something that you would be willing to accept?
Yeah, like I said, I'm open to however we have to develop the program. I mean, because that would be something that would be more palatable for the neighborhood. And like I said, logistically, it was already, I think, in that realm before they cut it off from the Richmond group. I mean, they're just 300 feet away from what already existed before, you know, the Skyline Drive neighbors. So, you know, I'm willing. We've got some time, so I've just got to get this submitted, the zoning changes for the sewer and the subdivision for town meeting right now. But we can work on that from now till town meeting. I mean, we can figure out whatever we have to do. If we have to make a whole new zoning, if that's advantageous to getting it passed. I know, well, this is the way I look at it. Town meetings supported this whole affordable housing agenda. We've obviously put forth, what, 20 million, 40 million, I'm not sure how much we voted in. So if not this piece of land, what? Because like we just pointed out, there's only 4% of the land left. And if this isn't a good piece of land to do it to, I don't know which land would be.
What kind of segued me to my comment, and I wanted to say before, I do appreciate and I'm thankful that you brought this to us. Like,
yes,
this is the first private, or I don't know if it's the first, but like, this feels good that you brought this to us. So thank you. I'm glad that we're here today having this conversation. So thank you. Rima, you had your hand up, and then I think Penny did as well. So go ahead, Rima.
Through you, Brian. Was there discussion about doing this as a friendly 40B, a cooperative 40B with us and the town? Because you know how zoning changes go at town meeting. It's a crapshoot no matter what. And yeah, but I guess you'd still need to extend the sewer district. You know, that would be important. But I was just wondering if you had talked about that with Andrew or anyone else.
No, like I said, we just, I know there's been land identified for a public-private partnership, and I know the piece of land next to it has been. So I like I said, this is just preliminary, and I'm up for any sort of discussion or any type of zoning changes. As far as 40B, I know we're in safe harbor, so that's why I think it would take town meeting vote to override.
Nope.
No, we can.
Nope.
Okay. Anyhow. I'm a novice, so that's where I'm looking for your guidance. I'm showing up with a piece of land and logistically in the right spot, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, just to clarify, you can do a friendly 40B even when we're in safe harbor. There's a difference. But do you want a motion, Brian? Because I'll make a motion that we continue to pursue these discussions with Clifford to see if this is something that's feasible for us to support.
Okay, is there a discussion on the motion or a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Brooke. Okay. By roll call, Penny Dye.
Aye.
Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Don Holgate. I think she may have had to step away. Brian Sullivan is an aye. Great. Great. So let's keep this going. Tucker, did you have a closing comment or statement or?
Yeah. I wanted to thank Clifford as well for bringing this early on here. And I think, as he's stated, he's indicated through the discussions that Andrew and I've had with him that, he's really open to any kind of approach that maybe collectively we all feel makes good sense. I understand his intention to be that this really go to serve exclusively the year-round community. I don't know that every unit necessarily would count on the SHI list, but that isn't necessarily the goal either. So just want to reiterate our appreciation for bringing this to our attention, and we've got a little time to sort out the best path.
In agreement. Thank you very much, Clifford.
All right, thank you, and I'm gonna go back to my regular job. I gotta go.
All right, goodbye.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for holding out with us.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, on to request from Meadows. Request from Richmond Meadows to P2A Glencourt subdivision. Dave, I'm just going to throw it to you and Andrew.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Dave Arminetti, Director of Real Estate Development for Richmond Great Point Development, LLC. And I'm not looking at the screen right now, but I believe Andrew Burek, our General Counsel, is with us, who most, if not all of you know and have worked with during the progression of our project.
Thank you for having us.
This is a very simple kind of ministerial administrative matter. I'm not even sure Andrew will need to answer any questions, but he may. As the board is aware, we are proceeding with the development of our Meadows 2 Phase 2A mixed income apartment development, which includes 24 units, 12 of which are AMI restricted to either 50% or 100% AMI, which the trust participated in, both in terms of support and financial investment. The progression of our transaction with the trust relative to the progression of our final subdivision with the land court is what's creating the need for this piece of paper to show at the land court before they will bless our final subdivisions that we've been working on for 7 years with them, all the way through the COVID pandemic. Essentially, the property that comprises the 24 unit site was part of our larger land, the 20 Dave Kim Lane property, which in an aggregate was part of the whole Glowacki asphalt plant, gravel and sand operation, and where Mr. Glowacki also stored a portion of his collection, as we have come to refer to it over the last 10 years. Over the years, we subdivided pieces of that out. This portion of the site to the north is part of the overall subdivision that included the abandonment of some roads that members of the board may remember, that was done in a friendly eminent domain process with the town as part of our overall development strategy, where we abandoned a small portion of Nancy Ann Lane that used to come out past the Parcel Plus building that people will recall, and we abandoned 2 of the cul-de-sacs from the former Cedar Crest 3 subdivision at the end of Mayflower Circle and the end of Daffodil Lane as part of our overall strategy that the homeowners in Cedar Crest 3 supported and that the town supported, theoretically, as a means of expediting this whole subdivision process. Laugh, laugh, hint, hint. But now we've gone through the whole process. We're at the final stages of this, literally. Andrew has been working closely with Town Council, Attorney Marsh. We've been working closely with Ken and Tucker to get the last bits and pieces of this done. And because we had to close our transaction with the trust to secure our financing for the Meadows 2 Phase 2 before we finalize the subdivision, the land court is now coming back at the very end and saying, you now have a lender who has a mortgage of record on this property that you sold before the subdivision was finalized. We want an assent from that lender to say that it's okay to subdivide the property and to finalize this. So that's all it is, nothing more, nothing less. A lot of legal procedure just to get us in position to where we can file this final Sandpiper 2 Meadows 2 subdivision plat with the land court. So I think I captured it, Andrew. If not, please feel free to articulate anything I didn't capture correctly. And otherwise, we would request respectfully that the board grant town council the authority to sign this piece of paper. And we will get on with the final stage of this and continue to build the project. And without digressing too much, I know this has happened in the intervening period since our last update from your October meeting. A bit of good news, as the board might recall. We've been waiting patiently for our final sign off from the state for the first of our 24 unit buildings. And that came through from the state BBRS about 3 days ago. So we now have the ability to proceed, get a final building permit for that first 8 unit building. And that building is scheduled to go online to be fabricated at SBS in Scranton on November 8th. And will be done in about a month, and will be on island plus or minus New Year's Day, and will be the first of our 8 units to be 24 units to be occupied. So a bit of good news there in conjunction with the schedule and our desire to continue to expedite the occupancy here. So other than that, Andrew, if I missed anything or didn't capture anything, feel free, and we appreciate the board's continued support and guidance as we move ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Andrew Burek with the Richmond Company.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you. David, I think you did an excellent job summarizing in appropriate context what is really what boils down to an experience in watching paint dry. So thank you. In addition to Dave's comments, I would like to point out that part of the land that is being subdivided as part of the record lot that was previously a portion of the 24 unit phase development, we will also need a partial release of land that's being basically contributed back to the Sandpiper 2 residential subdivision to complete some private property conveyances. But other than that, Dave, you summed it up.
Okay, thank you. Comment from Tucker?
I just was gonna, well, first of all, thank Dave and Andrew for being here and for all of their work on this. And I wanted to add that Vicki Marsh, Town Council, had planned to join today. She had an emergency, so she cannot, but I just want to reaffirm what Dave said, that we're really looking for a motion, a simple approval of the assent, and it would be expeditious to give the authority to Vicki to sign on behalf of the trust to put this to bed.
And if I may, Tucker, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Andrew.
In addition to that motion, I'm not certain that Town Council, Attorney Marsh, had added this to part of the agenda or the request of the board. However, in order to obtain our construction financing to construct the remainder of the units, in addition to the town loan and grant funds, they'll be needing a subordination of the affordable housing trust, the town of Nantucket's affordable housing trust fund mortgage to their security as first lien. So if we could add that to the motion as well as the partial release I mentioned, that's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Don Holgate.
I'm sorry, I stepped away for a second. For you.
Sorry, I was just recognizing you. I thought you had a comment.
No, I was just coming back in.
Gotcha. Sorry. Brooke.
So Tucker, this second part that Andrew just mentioned, has that been part of your conversation with Vicki, or is that additional?
Vicki had not, obviously included that in the language for the agenda for today. So I've not specifically spoken to her on that matter. I just sent her a text as Andrew brought it up to see if we can get some real-time feedback.
So I know we were talking about having a meeting on Friday for another matter. I'm going to suggest we postpone that until we can hear from Vicki. And then I would move to authorize Vicki to execute the assent as printed in our packet today.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any comment? Seeing none, vote by roll call. Wait, Tucker, did you have a comment?
I have 3 dots in my text, so you might want to wait one moment here.
Holding our breath.
Can we do this one and then do a second one?
Sure.
Okay, by roll, Penny Dye.
Aye.
Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Don Holgate.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye.
My thought was to separate them in case there's any issue down the road, to have them separate motions.
So do we want to go on to the next item, and when I hear from Vicki, we can circle back?
We can do that. Transfer fee strategy funding, transfer fee strategy funding discussion and action. Action, I love it. What are we doing?
love action. So thank you, Mr. Chair. So as the board, I think is aware, there's been a lot of effort going into getting a transfer fee passed at the State House in support of a housing bank, as we refer to it. And momentum, I would say, is building across the state. There was a hearing before the Joint Committee on Housing last week where there were approximately 20 folks testifying on behalf of the statewide enabling legislation for a transfer fee. Anne was at the hearing as well. Ken and I both testified specifically on behalf of this measure, along with our counterpart on Martha's Vineyard, Laura Silber, and many other folks. And so, as the board is aware, there has been talk of, certainly the real estate lobby, the Massachusetts Association of Realtors has full-time lobbyists, if you will, opposing what we're trying to get done here. And we think that it's time that we fight fire with fire. And so the way that we've had the opportunity to interview on the recommendation of a variety of different knowledgeable sources, really, I think 3 of the top firms that work in communication strategy and direct lobbying across the Commonwealth. One is referred to as ML Strategies. Another is O'Neill and Associates, that has a communication strategy counterpart organization called 7 Letter. And then finally, the Dewey Group. And we are working in concert with the folks on the Vineyard, and as well, Act Now has, as folks know, is set up as a 501c4, so they can engage in direct lobbying. We cannot engage in direct lobbying. And the Vineyard Coalition is kind of a informal but robust group of folks put together by the 6 towns on the Vineyard. So the thought here in terms of engaging a party on behalf of getting this across the finish line at the State House is that we would look at, let's say, dividing the financial responsibility for the engagement along lines where the different parties can actually contribute. And so Act Now would obviously have to be the party that paid for and engaged in any direct consulting, or excuse me, direct lobbying. We cannot pay for that. But what we can pay for is strategy and communications aspects of a campaign. And so we've been in touch with Brian Turbot to make sure that all of this, if we were to move forward with it, would be on side, so to speak. And he's reviewing some information that's been provided by the various firms and is going to make a determination, you know, that yes, okay, he feels that the appropriate safeguards are in place to ensure that no monies that we might want to commit would be used in a way that isn't legitimate. And so we would like to move forward with engaging a party on, let's say, in concert with these other entities. It only makes sense to use the same firm across all three endeavors.
Dawn, I see your hand up for comment.
I'm in shock right now. I feel extremely strongly that we have absolutely no association with ACT now.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And I've had concerns since the Vineyard trip where the entities were not as formally tied together, but this would be a very formal arrangement. It makes me extremely uncomfortable with the community reaction to ACT now.
Tucker, I'm also in agreement with Penny and Don. I don't know what other way that we can support the effort. I'd like to support the effort at the State House in some other manner, but I don't see any way.
We can't pay for direct lobbying, period. Not an option.
But as you mentioned, maybe there's some marketing in a different firm or some other option, but I don't see any way in doing anything in conjunction or commingling or anything to that effect.
Well, I mean, it's, I would say it's not just doing some marketing. This is a coordinated campaign. This is a fight. This is, the gloves come, in talking about engaging a firm, it is about kind of no holds barred. That's not a comment on the right party to be paying for it or not, but it would not make sense to have two different firms that are unrelated in some manner trying to do the campaign together.
Why do we even need to be involved in lobbying beyond what all the lobbying we've been doing for the last 8 years?
Is it across the finish line?
Yeah, but why do we have to do something in concert with ACT now?
I suppose we don't.
I'm not supporting that. So.
Rima?
So in essence, we would be paying for the strategizing and organization of, deciding what to do, or the firm, to decide what to do. And then ACT Now would pay the actual lobbyists under the guidance of the firm. I mean, is there a way to separate this?
Well, it would be separated in the engagement. So again, there are three parties potentially, where the Vineyard ostensibly would be their organization, the Coalition to Create a Martha's Vineyard Housing Bank, would be, let's say, handling the communications portion of the engagement, we might be handling the strategy portion of the engagement. And then Act Now, who is set up to be able to engage a direct lobbyist, would handle that portion of the engagement.
I mean, optics is terrible. It just is absolutely terrible, unless we can say that we are partnering with the Vineyard to devise a strategy and, you know, set up a communication stream and leave it at that. I don't know, but, you know, I'm sorry, but yeah, I agree with Don and Penny about the optics.
Thank you, Rima. Don?
I personally, I mean, we could take it to the rest of the select board, but I cannot in any way support taking any funding from Act Now. Not at this time.
So it feels like we've, with this item, it doesn't seem like it's worth belaboring. I think there's 4 members. It doesn't seem like we're going to get a vote on this or a motion to be moved on favorably. So I think we'll end discussion on this item at this time. Go ahead, Brooke. Do you want to make a comment?
I'd like to ask my fellow members through you, Mr. Chair, whether there is a way to structure a strategy, an effort that goes beyond our DIY methodology that we've been using for a decade that hasn't gotten us where we need to go. And is there an idea from those, you know, who are uncomfortable working with Act Now for legitimate reasons? I get it. I completely get it. Is there a way to move this effort forward, or should we ask Tucker to research or think about a way to move this forward as independent, an independent effort on our part that makes sense?
I think from what I've heard, I think there is only an independent with no opportunity to work with Act Now, either visibly or in a shadow whatsoever. So I think independent is the only way, is the message that I'm hearing.
I concur.
So I don't know I don't know what that opportunity is, but I would suggest if Brian Turbert can make a recommendation, I'd love to know what it is.
I guess I would need some more understanding about what gets, look, I get it. Ultimately, we have to secure votes from legislators, and that is lobbying. And so, yeah, and we can't do that. And so is there value in us doing anything else? And investing without that ultimate arm of that, or is there another potential financial partner for the lobbying?
Go ahead, Penny.
Sully, or Brian, through you to everybody else, we many years ago were fighting a particular cause, and it involved more than one lobbying team. So it can be done, just to clarify that. Not that we're going to do it, but one does not just need one lobbyist. Thank you.
Okay, so I think.
So what would you like me to tell the transfer fee folks, and especially, I guess, the Vineyard counterparts? We're interested to help, but the board is completely uninterested if Act Now is involved. Is that the message?
Unfortunately, that is the message, that we're unable to work with Act Now.
Got it.
Okay, moving on to the next item, possible zoning articles.
Right. Dave and I met with Andrew last month to discuss some of the things he brought up. And I think some of these came out of the housing production plan. But what we thought, we decided 3 would be the right number to sponsor, you know, if there's agreement, and or possibly co-sponsor with the planning board because they are zoning. So the first one that made sense was to increase the square footage of tertiary and accessory units. Tertiary are 650 at the moment, and accessory are 550 square feet. We thought that we could increase both of them to 800 square feet, and then 1,000 square feet if there was a covenant on the unit. So that was the first one. We just, that could encourage people to register, you know, bring existing units up to code. It will be easier to do so because probably many of them are over the current tiny standards. Brian Penny has a question.
Sorry. Yeah, just really quickly, if you could clarify, Rima, for everybody, when you say 800 square feet, you mean total square footage, not ground coverage, right?
Yeah, I think that's how it is in the bylaw.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Yeah. So
good idea.
For a covenant, you know, you could put, you know, at 1,000 square feet, you could probably put a tiny house on a property, you know, something just small, but then it's individual and separate. So that's the first one. And then the second one and the third one are sort of the same, but involve 2 different zoning districts. So we would like to expand the workforce ownership rental from R5 to R10. And then the third one would be to expand workforce ownership rental from R5 to R20. So we felt like we didn't want to lump those 2 together because, you know, it's kind of, you have a better chance of maybe one of them instead of both of them. But that would, again, you know, create more opportunity for affordable units and in fairly dense areas anyway. So how does anyone feel about that stuff?
Brooke?
I support them. And I think that we would need to have a really clear explanation as to what the workforce zoning bylaw means and how it would be applied. And my other question is, the ideal way for this to go is for the planning board to sponsor these because they don't have to be written by November 15th. If we do them, they go in as a citizens warrant articles and we only have 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks to draft them. So my understanding is that they're leaning in that direction, but I think we should encourage them sooner rather than later to commit so that we know what our timeline is.
Yeah, I think if we are in agreement on these, that we could send these over and say that, you know, we would like to co-sponsor, you know, if they agree that these are helpful and a good idea. And
Penny?
Yeah, I think they make a lot of sense. I just have a question, and I would support all 3 articles, of course, but what, has anybody talked about allowing for a 3rd covenant house on a lot? Maybe
I believe in a conversation that I had with Dave that the planning board has talked about that, allowing a second covenant basically on certain properties. So I don't know where that stands. Did you guys talk about that, Rima? Or
no, we did not. That didn't come up. I'm just looking at the definition for workforce, which
I heard that as well, and I think it was only on lots of a certain size or greater, and it came across as a great idea. I don't remember it exactly. I think the only downside was probably going to be septic capacity. Like the lots that it was going to apply was going to also have a septic issue and MESA issues. So how many was it actually going to create? But it could create some potentials. So go ahead, Brooke.
Does it make sense to have, well, I'd like to ask Andrew that. I mean, we don't have to do it in a meeting. I guess I could just ask him. Why don't I do that? I'll follow up with Andrew about that and report back.
Brooke?
So I had a conversation with Nat Lowell about this.
Yeah, he's all over it. Yeah.
And the proposal you're thinking about, Brian, I believe was an individual talking about a very large 4-acre lot in Tom Nevers.
I think
and this is separate and distinct from that.
Well, I think this birthed out of that, and then, yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I think I love this idea, and the reason I love it is that there are families with more than one child who don't know how to split the baby and create one covenant property. And with the qualified family member provision, this could be a lasting generational legacy for folks who have unsubdividable property to be able to help their kids.
Brian, without getting too deep in the weeds with the details, could we just see what Anne thinks about this on the surface of it?
Go ahead, Anne.
Okay, hi, thank you. I remember at the town meeting where it was that large lot subdivision in Tom Nevers, that ultimately failed because the Tom Nevers Association wanted to look a little bit deeper at it. But then from there, Nat Lowell was also thinking about lug 2 lots is what I remember, that he just wanted, he thought it was appropriate in those areas that you could carve off a second covenant property. But personally, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that when it's connected to town sewer and water, that would be a more appropriate area. So I would hope we could explore that possibility.
Thank you.
Dawn?
I love this idea. I mean, I think, essentially you would kind of give up your rights to a tertiary. You could have what in effect would be 2 secondary dwellings that could then be divided off. And I mean, regardless, you're going to be limited to whatever the ground cover ratio is, and you're going to be limited to whether it's septic capacity or whether it's on water or sewer. But I mean, I think this could apply to kind of any large lots, probably any of the LUG type of parcels and like the R40. And it could work, but it's still, you would kind of give up the right to have one really massive footprint of a main house to be able to do these. And it just creates more opportunities.
From a design standpoint too, it could be kind of more like cottages, more traditional, smaller scale development. Anyway, I think it should be pursued, not for this year, but at some point.
Anne?
I recall some of the pushback being more traffic and cars that would be required for if it was 3 separate owners on there. So maybe that's why they were more geared towards the larger lot subdivision.
Go ahead, Brooke.
I mean, I think we should pursue it in addition to the ones Rima recommended with the planning board and see if they're interested in even putting it forward this year. And the other argument Nat made to me was that carving off a single covenant lot is not it's a few $100,000 worth of equity, pulling equity out, but to be able to do 2 makes it more like $500,000, and it might be more of an incentive for someone to choose that. It has more value than a single covenant lot, and it may inspire people who need to draw equity.
We have to rethink our program if it passes. It'll need more funding. All right. Any more on that? It seems like we're all on the same page there.
Yeah, I can talk to Dave again and bring him up to speed on this fourth concept, right, Brooke? Or
okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna suggest that we ask the planning board maybe for a joint meeting to have a conversation about this.
Yeah,
or at least have Andrew come in.
Okay, great.
I would love to converse with the planning board and see where they're at on this with us in the room.
In the spirit of collaboration, which is one of our goals.
Ken?
Sally, I'm just going to have to leave. I have to go to a special meeting with Libby relative to the Concom discussion last night, so I apologize. Just give me strength, please.
Good luck, Ken. Good luck. Better you than me. All right. Let's see. And then, not that we need discussion, but since it is a potential, lost my train of thought, warrant article item, Clifford's proposal will be a warrant article subdivision. I don't know if now's the time or we just leave that open to discuss it more in the future, but he's going to have a sewer and potential zoning change. So if we want to see how that takes shape, I don't know how we create a restriction for the zoning change, but what might be interesting for something like that, how do you get a zoning change to happen with an affordability restriction at the time of the zoning change? Go ahead, Penny.
I was just going to suggest that it sounded like Clifford had already started working with Tucker. So maybe they could continue to work together and then pull us in as needed.
I got a head shake, yes.
Thank you.
Great. All right, with that, we'll come back, or we'll move on from this one. 135, 137 Orange Street for discussion. Tucker, I'll move to you. Where do you want to take this one?
Yeah, let's just maybe continue this to the next meeting. But in general, I think we want to start moving that thing forward.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Other business, upcoming meetings, potentially Friday at 9 a.m.
I think, are we going to move the budget along too?
Tucker, are you raising your hand?
Oh, well, are we going to go back to the budget item or?
Did I skip the budget? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I want to skip the budget.
Well, can I just quickly say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick update on the budget. So Ken and I had been in some recent meetings with Libby, Brian Turbot, and others around the budget, if you will, for next year. So the plan for housing funding for next year, it basically is as follows, which is the $5 million that the CPC approved, as you all know, hopefully gets approved by the voters at town meeting. Secondly, we have discussed with town administration and they are supporting the authority to use additional funds within Article 10, which is the capital budget, to do, it's basically an additional authority to bond another 10 million. So we had the 6.5 last year. This would be an additional 10 supported from the same source that would basically take about $1 million of the $1.6 million that is budgeted in Article 10 once, if we're going to use that additional authority. In addition, there's the 485 that is part of the regular Article 8. So that is the, in round figures here, we're talking about approximately $16 million of support for housing across the board. And that's the plan, unless the board would like to discuss and provide any additional feedback to town administration. But Ken and I feel good about that.
Open for discussion, board. I got one thumbs up. I got one head shake, yes. Okay, another thumbs up. We'll leave it at that. Moving on. Tucker, thank you.
Thank you. And then the meeting on Friday, is it possible? I think it might make sense if we can just do a quick poll if there is a quorum of folks who might be available early Friday afternoon to vote on an item that will be ready for voting with regard to land acquisition. We need to do that, and it's a public session item.
How many? 1, 2 thumbs up, 3 thumbs up.
After 1:30.
Okay. I'm not available on. I thought we had a meeting on Friday morning at 9.
It's contemplated, but we have not posted it yet because we were waiting until basically now to get affirmation that the documents are agreed to.
Okay, so on Friday afternoon, the earliest I could meet in the afternoon is 2:45.
So potentially we could do it at 3 p.m.
I could meet at 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon if we don't meet at 9. I can't do both.
We only need one.
Okay, so Tucker, you're looking at 3 p.m. from what you will have a quorum based on who's here now.
So we'll post a meeting then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And can I just add one other thing? I don't think we need to, we have scheduled an executive session today. Obviously, we covered a lot of stuff during the regular meeting today. I think anything we need to do in executive session, we could probably do on Friday. It would not be long after the one item that I mentioned before. Unless people want to hang around now.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Well, do we need it? Do we have any board comments before that?
Oh, oops.
I'm holding your motion. Go ahead, Tucker.
Sorry, I did hear back from Vicky. And so we could do this then, but she basically indicated that she had sent the subordination, a revised subordination to Andrew Burek. She was awaiting his approval for that. And that's why it was not on the agenda for today. She thinks the best thing to do at this point would be to include it formally on an agenda for Friday.
Okay, great. Let's do that. Okay. All right. So now, seeing no board comments, we are not having an executive session. We have a motion for item, I can't read that, 718 to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
By roll call, Penny Dye.
Aye.
Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Don Holgate.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.